أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري فداه أرواح العالمين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure to be back here once again to spend this Friday evening with you, or a portion thereof. And it's wonderful also to see just how far the debaters at the Al-Mahdi Mosque have come. I'm sure you would agree when I say that the debates were rather riveting, and the arguments, I particularly enjoyed how confident the debaters were, and they're in fact so confident that they would make an argument as absurd as that alcohol and Facebook are exactly the same, which translates as having, I guess I would say, 70% of the participants or 70% of the audience tonight completely drunk with Facebook usage at this exact moment. But I think that was beautiful, and a lot of very good arguments were made on both sides of the equation. So talking about Facebook, and Facebook of course is just one part of online social media. There's quite a lot of other websites, a lot of other services that provide a very similar experience, right? So you have Tumblr, and you have Twitter, and you have blogs, and all of these different services comprise what we commonly refer to as social networking sites or social mediums. And I think one of the arguments that was made, which I think is rather interesting, and you often hear it being mentioned when talking about the merits of social media, and that is that Facebook and similar services are like a knife, right? I think the Four team made that argument at one point. It's like a knife. You can't really put a label on a knife and say whether it's bad or good. It's neither bad or good, because a knife is just a tool. And that's the inherent argument that's being made, that Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and blogs are just another tool, right? And in doing so, in saying that they're just tools that you could use for either good or bad purposes, you're taking away the outcome, the end product. You're taking away from the argument what these websites and what these services are used for predominantly, most of the time, right? And so there is a problem with that argument, although, as I said, on face value, it makes sense. But then, instead of equating Facebook to knives, how about you use a different example? Instead of knives, how about we say AK-47 machine guns? Are AK-47 machine guns good or bad? I would suspect that most of you would say that they're bad. In fact, right now in the United States, there's a national debate from the president downward. Politicians and pundits and TV show hosts and powerful CEOs of multinational corporations, they're all engaging in a national debate in the United States right now as to whether or not guns should be limited. Their use and their availability should be limited. Gun control is the big catchword now in America. And they make the same argument. They say guns are only as bad as the people who use them. Knives are only as bad as the people who use them. Facebook is only as bad as the people who access it on a daily basis. But is that a good argument? Is that a logical argument? Do you think that guns should be proliferated, that everybody should have access to guns? I don't know if you've been to America, but if you ever go, you'll notice that at Kmart, even though Kmart filed for bankruptcy a few years ago, but up until it did, I remember Kmart stores would sell guns. You could literally walk into a Kmart or a Target and purchase a gun. And back then they didn't even have the sort of the 3-day waiting period, the more in-depth background checks that they used to perform that they're performing nowadays. And so, is that a good argument? Guns should be available to everybody, everywhere, and there should be no restrictions on their use whatsoever. And when there is a mass murder that takes place at a school, or a movie theater, or some other public place, then it's not the gun's fault, it's the people who use the guns, which of course, that is true. No one's debating, no one's saying that guns have, autonomously risen like machines and decided to kill people. Obviously, they're just tools. But is the use of these tools, is the proliferation of these tools the right thing to do? So I think using these arguments, you'll have a better chance of being able to arrive at a more logical conclusion when debating the pros and cons of social media. But at the end of the day, Facebook is here to stay. Now, the company might change. Mike Zuckerberg might decide to sell the entire company and become a philanthropist, as Bill Gates did, for instance, the founder of Microsoft. And there could be another company that emerges, Google Plus, right? Or, I don't know, MySpace could re-emerge once again. Most of you probably are not very familiar with MySpace. It actually used to be the predominant social networking service online before Facebook came along. So, the word Facebook might change, but this type of social interaction is here to stay. And so the question then is, do we advocate a total ban on the use of these social networking websites? Or do we try and make use of a very bad situation, right? I remember back in 2003, if I'm not mistaken, 2003, 2004, Facebook wasn't that big, MySpace wasn't that big, and I was invited to a school in Southern California. And the parents, the principal, asked me to talk about online social networking and to address what it was at the time a growing problem. It was a growing epidemic. And even in 2003, I remember, even though I didn't have a MySpace account, I didn't even know how it worked. All I knew is that, it's a public profile. You could put your pictures and your posts and so forth. But even then, I remember, I realized that we cannot possibly advocate a total ban. We cannot possibly tell people to stop using this service, because even then, it was very powerful, and everybody was signing up to these services. So, had I had the chance, right now, whether if for instance, was the President of the United States, and I had the choice of whether or not to allow a company like Facebook to emerge at this time, would I give it permission? Would I not give permission? I think that question, that scenario, that hypothetical scenario, is irrelevant. Right now, it is here, we have to deal with it. So how do we deal with it? Again, on both sides of the aisle, there were arguments, one saying that this needs to be Islamized, it needs to be made in such a way that it conforms to religious standards. But then, of course, we also had the very extreme position, which said that, no, this is as bad as alcohol, and if you misuse it, then it's just as sinful. Right? Which is a fair argument. By the way, can I also mention, as a word of advice to my brothers and sisters on both sides, that it's wrong to use the argument that, oh, if you're so against it, how come you have a Facebook profile? Or if you like it so much, how come you don't have a Facebook profile? This is a logical fallacy, right? In logic, this is called a fallacy. It's referred to as argument ad hominem, right? It's a personal attack which doesn't really serve the argument that you're putting forth. Anyway, what do we do with Facebook? How do we deal with it? What are the rules, the guidelines, the etiquette that one must adhere to in order to put this knife to some good use, right? A knife that can that can kill a man or could cook for a man. How do we deal with it? Well, as far as religion is concerned, the basic guidelines are pretty much standard, right? Don't lie, don't slander, don't commit ghiba. These things are pretty standard. They apply across the board. They apply to, one-to-one conversations, and they apply to the blogosphere, to the entire internet. So that much we all know. We all understand that. The specific issue that I'd like to raise includes the question of hijab. Right? I'm sure you all agree that with the emergence of social media websites, hijab has been compromised. Now you might say that there are sisters who didn't wear the hijab before, and now because of their ability to access Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and so forth, now they've come to realize the importance of hijab and they've decided to put it on. That's wonderful, that's beautiful. But is it also true that the vast majority of hijabi girls have done things on their public profiles that they would not ordinarily dare to do in their private lives? They would post pictures of themselves, which are compromised, and it applies to brothers as well. I'm not focusing on the sisters alone. These pictures are compromised. They compromise their decency. They compromise their chastity and their general akhlaq. And it's almost as though Facebook and Twitter gives us more audacity to flaunt our pictures, our compromised pictures. And deep down, there is this thought that it's okay. No one's going to see it. It's not as bad as me taking off my hijab in the street. It's not as bad as me engaging in an illicit act in public, because somehow we feel a sense of impunity, a sense of, no, this is pretty private. This is only for my close circle of friends and family, which of course we know this is wrong. So anyway, what I want to do tonight is, I don't have a lot of time, a couple of general guidelines for you to think about when it comes to using your public profile, whether it be on Facebook or any other website. Number one, beware of what you say. Why do you have to be aware? Why do you have to be at a constant state of consciousness as to what you say when you're engaging in the digital world? Well, the reason is very simple. Luqman, who was a man endowed with divine wisdom, he was given a choice, whether to be a prophet of God, a man in that position, or a wise erudite, a man of wisdom, a man of knowledge. He chose wisdom. And it's his wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes in the Quran on many occasions. He says in one hadith, addressing his son, he says to him, Ya bunay, O my son, Inna dunya bahrun amiq. This world is a deep, vast ocean. Gharaqa fihi kathirun. Many people have drowned in this ocean. Many people haven't been able to make it. Many people have perished. So you need to take up a means of salvation. Carry with you not an air tube, not a boat, but something that guarantees your salvation. What is it? At-taqwa. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. To be in a constant state of awareness of the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sister on the foreside mentioned the hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam enters his home when Fatima al-Zahra was still in his house. And I presume that the reason she was in the Prophet's home is that she was very, very young. She married at the age of 9. So how old was she when this incident occurred? I don't know. 8, 7, so very, very young. And the Prophet enters saying, Ya Bunayya, oh my daughter. Ibn Maktoum is coming. Ibn Maktoum was a blind companion of the Prophet. He would sit down and speak to the Prophet. The Prophet gave him a great deal of attention. The Prophet says to his daughter that Ibn Maktoum, who is blind and cannot see, is about to come into the house. Fatima Zahra gets up, wears her hijab, and leaves the room. The messenger stops her. He says to her, what happened? Ibn Maktoum is a blind man, he can't see you. She responds by saying, إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ يَرَانِي فَإِنِّي أَرَاهُ. If he can't see me, I'm not blind, I can see him. وَهُوَ يَشُمُّ الرِّيحِ. And he can detect my scent. Which is a mesmerizing statement if you think about it, coming from a 7 or an 8-year-old girl 14 centuries ago, that she knows that a blind man's senses, he can't see, he's lost the sense, the ability to see, right? But his other senses are amplified. His other senses, his hearing sense, his smelling sense, all of these are strengthened and amplified. She says, he can detect me from my scent. And I wish to move out. The Prophet ﷺ praised Fatima Zahra. He said, أَشْهَدُ أَنَّكِ بَضْعَةٌ مِّنِّي. You are truly a part of me, a part of the messenger. And so, at the end of the day, when it comes to social networking websites, brothers and sisters, as Luqman said to his son, he said, this is a vast ocean. And a lot of people have perished. A lot of people have lost their way. A lot of people, in fact, that's the very reason why Facebook was invented, wasn't it? Read the book, watch the movie. It was invented so that a couple of college students could figure out a way where they could put pictures of their female peers to compare them. A list of who's hot and who's not. So if that's the reason why it was invented, you can imagine how the vast majority of its resources and the vast majority of the people who use it are going to use it. And so, again, I'm not going to advocate a total ban, but I will say that you need to be extra careful. We're all careful when we're in the street. Our hijab, for the most part, alhamdulillah, and that's an enviable source of pride for myself when I see a sister who wears the hijab in public, or a brother who maintains himself with chastity. That's absolutely beautiful. But when it comes to Facebook, we need to be extra careful. Why? Because the temptation is greater. The temptation is, let's put our guard down. It's okay if I put 1 or 2 pictures from my wedding. Well, the wedding might have been a private event. Facebook isn't. Twitter isn't. So number 1, watch what you say. Watch what you post. That's very, very important. فَإِنَّ, Luqman says, فَإِنَّ النَّاقِدَ بَصِيرٌ بَصِيرٌ. You know how when you go to the airport and they put your bags through an x-ray machine? I don't know if you've seen the monitor on the side of the security officer and what they see. I have, and it's pretty vivid. You think you've hidden something in your bag, but they can see it all. Right? Using those, especially the modern X-ray technology that's come out. It's unbelievable. In America, I don't know if they have them here in Australia, but in America, they even have these machines where they scan your entire body and they can see an outline, a very clear outline of your bodily organs. I was once asked to go into one of those, and I said no, as a matter of religion and a matter of principle, and that raised alarms, and they called security officers from across the airport saying, why is this guy resisting even though it's within my right? So the fact is, it's very, very vivid, and it's available for them to see. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see even better than that. فَإِنَّ النَّاقِدَ بَصِيرٌ. The one who's scanning your every move, your every action, your every pressing of a button, every keystroke is accounted for. Every keystroke is accounted. Every character that you type. You think every character is accounted for in Twitter, where you have a maximum of 140 characters, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't going to keep track of all that? If Twitter can keep track of it. So number 1, watch what you say. Number 2, there is a beautiful hadith by Imam Rida alayhi salam. Listen to this, brothers and sisters, where the Imam says that there are 3 features that no believer should be devoid of. In other words, every believing man and woman should have these features, these three features. And the Imam says that each of them resembles someone. The first is sunnatun min rabbih. You have to have a feature that resembles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa sunnatun min nabiyyih, wa sunnatun min waliyyih. And a feature that resembles the Prophet, and a feature that resembles the Imam. Then Imam Allah says the first feature that resembles Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kitmanu sirrih, is to conceal your secrets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God has a lot of secrets. There are lots of things that no one knows about this vast and ever-expanding universe. This gigantic cosmos has a lot of places that no one has access to, no one has ever seen. And these are secrets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept to Himself. The Imam says that you need to be able to keep secrets just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Why is it that the entire world needs to know about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight? Why does the entire world needs to know about where I'm going to vacation this summer? Why is it that the entire world needs to know about what I'm going to see over the weekend? I mean, seriously, the world does not care about you. The world does not care. That may come as a shock to most of you. The world does not care about me. The world simply doesn't care about every little detail that is my life. Back in the old days, I remember people used to keep journals and diaries. Some people do to this day, but I'm sure if you see someone with a diary or a journal, you'll say, you know, do you live in the Stone Age or something? There's Facebook now. But people had diaries, and these diaries, I don't know if you've seen them, some of them used to come with locks, so that not everyone could open it. To protect the information that's there, the nuclear launch codes, right, from prying eyes, especially your siblings or brothers and sisters, mostly your parents, I'm sure. And people used to keep these, and these were their secrets to keep, until someone discovered it and posted it on Facebook. But up until that moment, it was their secret. And people also used to have something that is really not a part of the equation anymore, and that's family albums. Remember how you used to have albums with your great-great-grandmother's picture in it? People you don't even know what their names are? And now they don't have family albums. They don't have diaries or journals. Instead, they have Facebook. But instead of these things being private matters, things kept for the family and members of the extended family, now they're available for everyone to see. Why? Why don't we have our secrets anymore? Private things should be kept private. فَسُنَّةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ كِتْمَانُ سَرَّةٌ, to keep secrets. I'll mention the rest of the hadith as well because it's beautiful. The Imam then says that the tradition, the feature you need to adopt from the Messenger of Allah, mudaratun nas, is to treat people with equity and kindness. That's how the Messenger of Allah treated people. Because sometimes people will tell you, well, the Messenger is different. Rasulullah is different. I was saying the other day to a group of brothers, I said, when it comes to dealing with the British Defence League, who are a very active anti-Muslim party in the United Kingdom and across Europe now, I said the best way to deal with them is to ask yourself, what would the Prophet do? What would Rasulullah do? If he treats the one who would throw garbage at him and hot ashes at him every time he walked out of his house by missing them one day and then asking where they are. When he's told that the person's in his house, he hasn't left the house for 3 days, what does the Prophet do? He goes to pay them a visit. The man must have freaked out, I'm sure, with the Prophet knocking at his door. But I'm only here to see how you're doing, to perform what we call iyadah. What would the Prophet do? Mudaratun nas. And the last part of the hadith says, وَسُنَّةٌ مِّن وَلِيِّهِ, to pick up a trait from your Imam, وَهُوَ الصَّبْرُ عَلَى الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. The trait we all need to adopt from our Imams is to be patient in the face of trials and tribulations and pains and agonies, which is what the Imams used to go through. Moving on. So the second point is that you need to keep secrets. Do not expose everything. And I don't want to talk about how people are subjected to identity theft. 10 million people a year. And the number's growing every single year. 10 million people are fall victim to identity theft. Do you know what that means? To have your identity stolen by someone else? To have someone using your driver's license and your passport and your credit cards? And access your most private information? And that only happens because we compromise the information. Because we put it out there. Because people are stupid enough to put a post on Facebook and Twitter saying that, oh, bye, we're going to go on a little mini vacation for 3 days. And you think that doesn't give an open license for a burglar, for a thief, to know that you won't be at your house for 3 days? And of course, thanks to these GPS coordinates that now even go with the posts themselves, you enable a feature, and every time you post something, you can actually show your location on a map. So people know where you live. They know that you're not at home. That's dangerous. Honestly, that scares me. I don't know why that doesn't scare the living daylights out of all those people who share too much information online. And last, when it comes to hijab, brothers as well as sisters, I'll conclude with this. To speak to someone, and I'm going to mention a few ahadith just to scare you and leave you to ponder over those ahadith. The hadith says that if you speak to a person of the opposite gender in a flirtatious manner, and of course, with Facebook and Twitter, you don't even need to post a voice message. The emoticons do a very, very good job, right? Those love hearts and those smiley faces, they do a very good job of revealing your innermost emotions using but a few bytes and characters. It's amazing. The hadith says that if one speaks to a person of the opposite gender in a flirtatious way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will burn them in hell for 1,000 years for every word that they used when flirting. Now this is difficult for us to even comprehend. 1,000 years per word. For every word that we use to speak in a flirtatious manner, to satisfy a desire through an illegitimate means, through a way that is haram. And it's enticing, as the brother mentioned. It starts with a hello. It starts with something absolutely innocent. But here's the thing. Even scholars say that you should not speak about any topic unless it's absolutely necessary. So what constitutes absolutely necessary? What's really important for you to talk about? It could be religious matters. It could be asking about the authenticity of a hadith, which by the way is a problem as well. I've seen a lot of people post so-called hadith and quote Imam Ali and Imam Hussein when it's not a hadith. I don't know who came up with that quote, but it's not a hadith. But it makes people think that it's a hadith simply because it ends with the words Imam Ali or hashtag Imam Ali. You need to investigate the authenticity of what you read, find out whether it's actually a hadith or not. If it's found in our main collections of hadith, then you can trust its source and there's no problems. But you need to be careful as well. So when it comes to religious matters, the proliferation of religious awareness, to learn about our faith, to learn about the imams, or to learn about things that are directly related to our everyday lives. Things that have to do with human rights abuses across the world, the oppression that's taking place against our brothers in humanity. These things are very, very good. Use it for those purposes. Use it to disseminate information and to make awareness. That's really good. But if it's anything other than that, if it's anything other than what is absolutely necessary, why make a conversation? What's the point? Where are you going with this? Is the question I would ask. Why are you saying, hello, how are you, been a long time? What's the purpose of all of this? If you can answer the question of where you're going with this with a good, reasonable, logical response that satisfies you, then go ahead. But if it's anything other than the direct pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be careful. Be careful. Now, I'll conclude with this. Again, I think Facebook could potentially be a great tool. For the vast majority of people who use it, it's not. For the vast majority of people who use it, it's just another means to hook up. It is to get to know people for illicit means, for illegitimate purposes, but we can make a difference. And I think this is where we can bring both sides of the debate together. You and I can certainly use Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and blogs and so forth in a constructive way. Otherwise, they're going to end up being another set of WMDs. What's a WMD? WMD, anyone? What does it stand for? Weapons of mass destruction. But there's another kind of WMDs. Weapons of mass distraction. I think they're a lot more destructive than a nuke. Because a nuke, as bad and evil and despicable as it is, isn't used that often. And people know that it's evil. People know that it's bad. But when it comes to Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr, most people are oblivious to the fact that this can be a wormhole. It can be quicksand. It can be something that sucks you into an abyssal hole of misguidance, of deviation, and being driven away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you're careful, and if you're watchful, and if you're always questioning yourself, questioning the motives of why you're doing this, why you're saying that, why are you posting a picture of yourself, because that's the problem. Why is it addictive? The people talked about, the brothers and sisters talked about it, the addictive nature of Facebook and Twitter. Do you know why it's so addictive? Because we have an insatiable desire, each and every one of us, I won't exclude anyone, we have an insatiable desire of feeling popular. We love to feel popular. We love to have someone praising us. I love to post a picture of me in the bathroom, taking a picture of myself in the mirror like an idiot. Honestly, man, when I see pictures like that, I think, have some respect for yourself, brother, sister. Taking a picture of yourself in your bedroom, in your bathroom, what are you trying to prove? That you're a loner who doesn't have any friends and nothing better to do than to take lousy pictures of yourself? Honestly, it's pathetic. But we love to post those pictures so that other idiots would then come and like the picture, post the comment, be creative about the comment that they post. Because here's the thing, I only have one birthday a year. When I post a picture or a post about my birthday, one of my friends comes and posts something about my birthday, happy birthday, right? Then the next person can't say happy birthday because that'll be lame. It can't be the same statement, so it has to be a lot more creative than that. So they come up with something else that, listen, we've got nothing against being artistically inclined. We've got nothing against being creative in your writing, and that's all beautiful, right? In fact, I think Facebook and Twitter can contribute to someone's writing being improved. But the problem is, because we have this insatiable desire to be praised and to be liked, there's always more that we can have. There's always more that we want and more that we desire. So if I've got 1,000 followers, I could always go for 5,000. And if I've got 5,000, but then my friend has 6,000, I'm always aiming for 6,000. When I get to 6,000, there's always more. There's always, that desire is insatiable, as I said. You can never make it, fill it to satisfaction. And by the way, since we're on the topic, the number of people who like you, the number of people who follow you, is never a measure of your worth. Never. You can have no Facebook profile. Imam Zaman has no Facebook profile. He's not on Twitter. And yet there are at least 500 million people. At least 100 million of those who would die for him. So how many friends you have and how many likes you get is never a measure of your worth. But if that's something that you like, and we all like it, right? There are actual a'mal that you can perform, such as a particular prayer on a Friday, which if you want, I can send it as a text message or leave it on my Facebook profile for you to read, which the hadith says makes people like you, right? Who doesn't want to be liked? There are actual religious good deeds that bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because you're getting closer to Allah, people like you. Man kana ma'Allah, kana Allah ma'ah. Man khafa Allah, akhafa Allahu minhu kulla shay. I'm sure you've listened to this hadith. He who fears God, everybody else fears him. Fearing as in taking notice of you, not hurting you because you're too big or too strong. If you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَخَفِ اللَّهِ أَخَافَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. And he who does not fear God, fears everything else. That's why these celebrities are so pathetic, that all they chase throughout their lives is nothing but fame. Why? Because they're afraid of not being loved by everybody. They're afraid of not being invited on a talk show or not being hired to cast in a movie. They're always having these plastic surgeries, which most people are obsessed about for some reason that is simply beyond me. Why people would be obsessed about the lives of the rich and famous, the lives of these celebrities, I have no idea. Who cares about, Angelina Jolie's plastic surgery or whatever it is she's had? Who cares about the newest pet that Paris Hilton decides to adopt? Who cares about these people and their hairdo and their makeup? It's absolutely pathetic, and it consumes our lives. It destroys the most important capital that we all have, which is time. We don't live for 1,000 years. We live an average of 70 years, brothers and sisters. Even with the advancement of medicine and technology, I don't think you'll be able to hit 100. I'm sorry to put it like that. Most people die in their 60s and 70s, according to a hadith. أكثر أعمار أمتي, the Prophet says, ما بين الستين والسبعين, between 60 and 70 years. How much of that time are we willing to waste on worthless posts, on irrelevant messages, and on the lives of the rich and famous? I hope the answer is none. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us, to enlighten us, to illuminate our hearts, and to show us and guide us to the path of righteousness. To show us the beauty of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, so that we would be occupied by none other than those heroes and nobody else. Let's all stand up and recite the dua for the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun li waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل اللهم على محمد وآله الطاهرين.